Success is when you bring out the best in other people. In other words, there's kind of an old joke, kind of a funny saying that everybody lights up a room. Some people light it up when they walk into it, and some people light it up when they walk out of it. I want to be the person that lights it up when they walk into it. I want to bring the best out in other people. And to me, that's a measure of success.
Greetings and gratitude to you all. Welcome to the X Factors to Success podcast show. I am your host, Ruggiero Fraticangeli, also known as the G-Man. Welcome everyone, and thank you for stopping by at the show. And it's going to be a great one today because I have a special guest. As you always know, I always bring those unique, inspiring, influential guests on our show. Before we get started, I'd like to start off with a quote by one of my favorite authors, Robin Sharma, and it's in direct relationship with our guest today. It's about leadership. Quote, leadership is not about a title or a designation. It's about impact, influence, and inspiration. Impact involves getting results. Influence is about spreading the passion you have for your work, and you have to inspire yourself, your teammates, the customers that you're serving, and so on. So, today's guest, we have an awesome, successful person that really served our country. Her name is retired Navy pilot Captain Karen Baetzel. Yes, and she has seen the word leadership used in many contexts and wondered what makes for a great leader. Karen believes that leadership is a matter of training, discipline, and practice. You will benefit from learning military methodology that works right here on the X Factors to Success show. You may think that, well, is this another self-proclaimed leadership expert spouting the latest platitudes? Not hardly. Karen is a fusion of tough-minded senior military leader, a successful corporate executive, and a gifted speaker and trainer. She retired after 30 years as one of the Navy's most senior female Navy aviators. She's also one of the few naval aviators of either gender to qualify as an aircraft commander in fly helicopters, propeller, and jet aircraft. After a commanding officer tour, she served as an instructor on the elite Navy leadership training team and then translated that service and success in the corporate world. Captain Baetzel has the resume of a practitioner serving organizations such as NASA, Microsoft High Performers, and Departments of State and Defense, and many, many more. She was honored in 2015 to be named one of the nation's top 101 leadership speakers by New York Times bestseller author Kevin Kruse. Without further ado, please welcome retired Navy Captain Karen Baetzel. Welcome,
Okay.
welcome, Karen. Can I call you Karen?
You can, please do.
Okay.
I feel much more comfortable. Good morning. It's great to be with you, Ruggiero. I'm joining you from my home in Memphis, Tennessee, and it's great to talk with you again.
Beautiful. Tennessee. That is awesome. I love it. I visited Tennessee some years ago, and Memphis, of course, land of Elvis Presley. And,
yes, indeed.
And I love also, of course, Nashville, one of my favorite cities in this country. Well, Karen, thank you so much for taking your time to spend time with us for the next 30 minutes or so on the X Factors to Success. It was a pleasure meeting you and having you, seeing you on stage giving two wonderful speeches and presentations at the annual Toastmasters conference this past year in District 46 in New York City. So, and you inspired me, and I said, I have to have this wonderful, successful woman on the show and to share with my audience. So, Karen, thank you again and welcome. I look forward to having a great time here.
Me too.
So, Karen, I'm going to start off just with my first question that I ask everyone. What is your definition of success? I know you have over the years of being in the military and a pilot, so how would you share with your definition?
It's an interesting question because my answer to that has changed over my life. When I was a younger person, I thought success was something different than I think that it is now. In the sixth decade of my life, I would say my definition has refined itself. And I believe that the best capture of it is to say, success is when you bring out the best in other people. In other words, there's kind of an old joke, kind of a funny saying that everybody lights up a room. Some people light it up when they walk into it, and some people light it up when they walk out of it. I want to be the person that lights it up when they walk into it. I want I want to bring the best out in other people. And to me, that's a measure of success. I didn't always think that way. I used to think that getting promoted, making more money,
Right.
The typical trappings of success that you might think about as the popular notions of it. But I've come to believe that bringing out the best in other people is really what success is all about. I'm kind of, this might creep you out a little bit when I tell you this, but I love cemeteries.
Oh.
Cemeteries to me are peaceful, calm places, and places that I really can find myself doing great reflection. And when I walk through a cemetery, I always read tombstones because I'm a perpetually curious person, and I'm always wondering, well, what can I learn from this person from their tombstone?
Right.
And most of the time, it's the typical stuff. But I saw a tombstone one time that I've never forgotten, and the epitaph was just it was a woman, the woman's name.
Yeah.
And it didn't give her dates of birth and death or beloved mother or beloved wife like so many tombstones do. It said her name, and underneath it, it said, she brought out the best in others. And I thought, wow. What an awesome epitaph. If that's worthy of being carved in granite.
Yeah.
If and I thought that gave me something to think about to this very day. So to me, when I think about success, that's the domain I think about it now.
I love it. Thank you. You know what? It just made me think about. It's funny that you're saying that because I have to be quite frank with you. I do a lot of traveling in my training business, and I too will go to cemeteries or just stop, especially the old ones. I go up into the areas and I see these from the 1800s, and you say, what were the mindset of the individuals who are here, resting here, and what was their thought process? Even from the beginning of the country, we're in again, in the United States, and those of you who are listening right now, you're probably listening from anywhere in the world, and I'm sure even in your country, folks. What is it about the dreams that many people took with them and never came to fruition? That's something I've been thinking about too. There's a speaker out there. I'm sure maybe you know it, Les Brown. He's been out for a long time.
Oh, yes.
I had an opportunity to be with him a couple of times in the past 4 or 5 years, and he quoted this: one of the most precious places in the world are cemeteries. And it's interesting that you're saying that because people die with full of dreams. And he says always this: live full, die empty. Make a difference in the world. It's amazing how just everything ties up. So thank you for sharing that and kind of stimulating some ideas. And those of you who are listening right now, hey, you're probably thinking about the same thing. Maybe next time you pass by a cemetery, maybe you want to stop and read the tombstones and see what the inspiration you can get from there. So thank you, Karen, for that wonderful opening here on defining success. Now, Karen, I'm sure people are saying, well, I shared your bio and retired Navy pilot, and you're one of the first women in the aviation world. Can you talk about more about, give us what inspired you, what motivated you to go into aviation and being a pilot?
That story, your listeners might be surprised to hear that my story is not typical. When you talk to many people in aviation, particularly in military aviation, they often have a family heritage. My dad, my uncle, I was inspired by a family member. In fact, at the time and place when I went through military training, there were so few women. I got to know almost all of them personally because there was such a small number of us. And many of those women were just from that profile. They are dads mostly or brothers, were military pilots, and they had this family heritage of wanting to serve. And that's very typical in the military. We've become a generational military where many people follow in the family footsteps, so to speak. But for me, that was not the case. I joined the Navy to see the world and to chase an opportunity that I knew was not, or at least I was pretty sure, was not going to happen in the small town that I grew up in. I'm a working class kid. I do not come from money or wealth. My parents were working class people who earned their living with their hands and their back. They grew up very poor and managed to make a working class home for me and my brother and my sister. but it was a rural area, and I knew that unless I wanted to be a teacher or a nurse, which seemed to be the only real options for professional women,
yes,
I had to do something else. And joining the Navy and joining the military, actually, not so much the Navy, but joining the military became a very impulsive decision one day.
Wow.
It wasn't something that I thought over long and hard or pondered or got advice. And I went down to the recruiting office, which this recruiting office was odd because I actually could stand in a geographic place and look in all 4 doors of each of the 4 services: the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Air Force.
Okay.
So I could. This was not only a symbolic crossroads; it was a physical crossroads. If I went north, south, east, or west, I was going to end up in one of the different services. And I had a mild preference for the Air Force, only because my brother had served in the Air Force and as an enlisted man during the Vietnam War.
Oh.
I thought, well, okay, I'll try that. So I walked in, and this was Jimmy Carter's military, by the way. So This was a while ago.
Gotcha.
And it was after the drawdown of Vietnam. They were not taking just everybody. And the people that they did take, the military was going through a real difficult transition in the post-Vietnam years.
Yeah, correct.
And the recruiter said, unless you have a computer or math degree, we are not interested in taking you as an officer. And so I said, well, my degree's in economics, and I'm not going back to college to get a second degree. So I walked back out to that place in the middle of the hallway where I now had 3 options. And the Marine Corps was at lunch, so now I have 2 options. And the Army and the Navy guys were both sitting at their desks, furiously working away at their desks, the recruiters. And I looked at both of them, and the Navy guy glanced up at me and made eye contact first. And so I said, okay, I guess I'll go this direction. So I don't want anybody to have this romantic notion that I have this inspiring story of how I ended up in the military, because it wasn't like that.
Okay.
But I believe in grace, and I believe in the energy of the universe sort of follows good juice, good karma.
Uh-huh.
And that's always served me well and always followed me. So I went in there and I told him what I wanted to do, and he said, do you want to test for an officer? And I said, yes. And he goes, well, are you interested in flying? And I said, no, I'm not interested in flying. I know nothing about airplanes. I have a degree in economics.
Is that amazing?
I just want to get out of here. Just put me on the next bus away from here. I want to go somewhere else.
Right.
And he said, okay, I can do that. So I spent my first 2 years in the Navy learning. I lived in Japan. I asked to be sent far away, and I was sent pretty far away.
What an experience that was.
Yeah, it was. I was sent as far as I can go without starting to head back if I kept going. So I spent 2 years in Japan, and then I really pondered my future in the Navy and said, I want to, this is the combat arms. I don't want to be an unrestricted line officer, which is sort of a general administrative officer.
Okay.
I want to be a operator, and I could either fly ships or drive ships or fly airplanes at that time. But they were taking such few numbers of women, it was quite an ordeal to get selected for that. But I did. And that's how I ended up in aviation. So
wow,
it was a Forrest Gump story.
Well, you had 4 choices, and 2 were out to lunch, and the Navy recruiting officer acknowledged you first, and the rest is history. And it's amazing. Now, where were you? Where were you residing during this time? In Tennessee or?
No. I grew up in Maryland, in a very small town in Maryland.
Okay.
And I haven't been back there since, because I've been on this journey of life that I've been on has taken me to lots of different places in the United States and abroad. Right. Some with the military, and then some. I married an airline pilot. I married a fellow Navy pilot who went on to be an airline pilot. So we moved around a lot.
Okay.
And we currently moved to Tennessee about 2 years ago.
Super. Well, great. Thank you for sharing with that. Again, folks, those of you listening, divine intervention, God, Spirit, that will align you in the direction of your purpose. I always talk about purpose and being clear of purpose, but sometimes when you have these images and these events that are happening in your crossroads, you have to make a choice, and you have to believe in karma. You got to believe in that faith, have faith in it. One of the X factors to success, Karen, that I teach in my workshops is faith, family and friends, fitness, finance, and fun. I call it the circle of F's, and it's the pentagon of foundation of one's direction in where they are moving from where they are to where they're going. And
I really like that.
Yeah,
I really like that.
And
It's very holistic.
Yes, it is. And I'm working on my book on that, on those 5 major key areas. And we look about faith and believing yourself and having that notion that you have the clarity of who you are, what you are moving forward. Part of the fitness is the spiritual fitness and also the mind fitness and the physical fitness. And I guess you exude those qualities, X factors, in your journey the last decades as a pilot. So can you talk more about as a woman, and those of you who are listening there, male and female and no gender, and you're probably saying, wow, she flew planes, helicopters. I mean, you've done this here. Can you give us a little bit of give us a short little experience? How did it feel when you get behind an aircraft like that? And can you just share with us, with the audience?
I can. It was extraordinary, is what I can tell you. I did not come with a military or an aviation background, so I was starting really from absolute scratch. And the idea that if you apply yourself, if you work hard enough, if you focus, there's really very little in this life that you cannot do. I won't say that you can do anything. In fact, I think that's a romantic myth that, oh, you can be anything you want. No. But there are a million things that you can be. And one that I chose to be was a pilot. And the first time that I soloed in a Navy aircraft where the government handed me the keys to a very expensive trainer and said, go out for 2 hours and come back and don't hurt yourself or anybody else.
Wow.
And we'd like the airplane back in one piece. And, I was like 23 years old. It's like, this is it. This is
You're
it.
in it, girl.
This is in it. And then each step along the way became progressively more challenging and more difficult. Flying aboard ship, flying at night, working with a crew, making sure you were doing a mission. All of those things kind of built on themselves to go back to what you said, that if you approach things holistically and with the right focus, there's very little in this life you cannot do. Not everything, but you can do a lot. You can fill up a lifetime with no problem. And that was what happened with me in aviation.
Super. Wow. Now, I know that you doing workshops and you have a brand called Battle X, and I love it. I do it. And right behind you, folks, you can't see this right here, but when I heard Karen speak, it was a morning presentation, an afternoon or evening dinner presentation, and really capture. You talk about leadership, followership, organization, climate, diversity. Those are key things that you teach out there. Can you share with us how the work that you're doing right now? How is it empowering you? But more importantly, how is it inspiring others in the organizations that you're speaking? I know you spoke at NASA. You're doing work with the Department of State and Defense. Right now, you're really sharing your experience as a retired captain pilot now into the civilian world. Can you give us a little bit of a insight there?
Sure. My business model, when I left the Navy and started my own business, I focused on 3 areas: on consulting, training, and speaking. And just like everything else in my life, I didn't exactly know what I was doing. I was sort of making it up as I went along. And as it's rolled now in the past 10 or 12 years, sometimes I'm doing a lot more consulting, sometimes I'm doing a lot more training, and other times I'm doing a lot more speaking. And the fates have been good to me that no matter how the wind blew, I was always able to adjust my sail and go with it. The theme that connects all of those 3 pieces, training, consulting, and speaking, is a desire to help people realize their potential. And that right now, the focus of my work in 2018, and it looks like it's going to be, or 2019, and it looks like it's going to be my 2020 focus, is heavily into consulting. And I do a lot of work with personal performance, organizational development, organizational culture, skills in communication, all of those domain things that people sometimes derisively refer to as soft skills.
Yeah.
There's nothing soft about them.
Right.
You can teach mathematics and engineering, the hard skills, and all day long, because that is math. But this is art. And working with people to develop their soft skills, and I hate that term. I actually think we have to come up with
another word. Yeah, I agree with you.
There's nothing soft about them. And any person who works in HR who's listening knows exactly what I'm talking about. The people who end up in the HR office as problem employees are not the ones who can't master the work. It's they cannot get along with other human beings. And so that's where we work. And I work at it on individual coaching level with people on their specific communication styles or their ability to have difficult conversations. And I work at sort of the larger level with organizations and their organizational culture and the direction that they want their organizations to head. So that's sort of what I'm doing. Okay. And it's all tied together with the theme of making people realize their own potential.
Now, you touched one thing that already I've been contemplating quite a bit. Organizations have cultures, and they have a certain kind of a foundation which resonates into their product and services. And each individual plays a big part of customer satisfaction, inspiring, empowering, and being passionate. What would you say with the, we have this terminology, millennials out there working in the corporate world, and you have this future Gen Zs coming in right now. Where do you see the corporations and coming from your background into the civilian corporate world, where do you see that we need work on?
Well, that's a big question. You and I could talk we could talk for a week about that. But I'll key in first on, you said coming from where I come from.
Right.
I worked essentially half of my career with millennials as I aged. When you spend 30 years in any place, sure, you're going to end up with a workforce that's younger than you. And I'll tell you a story about one night on board USS Abraham Lincoln. And if you've never seen the flight deck of a carrier, the word awesome is appropriate.
Karen, I live in New York City, and
so you know it
on the west side there.
Yeah, you know it. Well, for your folks who haven't had the pleasure of seeing what their tax dollars have bought for the Navy, an aircraft carrier is 4.5 acres of sovereign America that can go anywhere in the world. And it's the most dangerous place in the world to work at night. It's really, truly a ballet. And what a lot of people don't realize is an aircraft carrier is manned. The average age of a aircraft carrier sailor is about 22, 23 years old.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, stand by. Yes, the military is very young. Stand by, because the average age on the flight deck, because those are almost all the junior sailors, is more like 19 or 20. So I've seen millennials do work that will astound you.
Oh, okay.
And the key is that they are given autonomy, and they are given direction, and they are given training. So when I hear folks fuss about the millennials and they need a lot of hand holding and they need a trophy every 2 hours and all this nasty stuff that's said about them, it doesn't track with the millennials I know. And that night that I was talking about on the USS Abraham Lincoln, flight deck ops, it's the Northern Pacific off the coast of California.
Okay.
And a young man working on the flight deck got too close to the jet blast of a departing aircraft and was blown over the big nets and over the side. Now, over the side of a carrier is 90 feet to the water. So that's like 90 feet falling into concrete, because the water is a hard surface when you hit it at that speed and velocity from that distance. Now, he had on his float coat, which is a self-activated flight life preserver.
Right.
But what it does not do is it will bring him to the surface, but it does not turn you over if you're on your face and you're unconscious. So, against all training and against all common sense
protocols, right?
Yes, a young sailor who watched him go over the side went right in after him.
Amazing.
In the dark, in the cold, cold Pacific. And those guys don't wear wetsuits or anything.
Sure.
They're just wearing dungaree pants and
Correct.
shirt. Well, now, a carrier during flight ops always has a rescue helicopter in the air. So to make a long story short, not to get drama, fortunately, both of these young men were recovered within a few minutes. And despite having a few cuts and bruises and quite a story to tell, they were none the worse for wear. But the young man I want to tell you about is not the one who got blown over, but the one who
jumped in.
Who jumped in. Now, you might think, well, this kid had a hero complex, or he was a lifeguard in his past or something.
Right.
No. He was a Navy third-class swimmer, which means there's no lower level than third class. He was basically a rock.
Right.
He could get himself into a life jacket. That's about what a third-class swimmer can do. But he said that he thought his shipmate hit his head on the way over the side when he was blown over, and he was worried that he could not right himself on the surface of the water and that he would drown because he was unconscious. He would be on the surface,
sure.
but he couldn't get his face out of the water. So he said, I just went in after him. That's the millennials I know.
I love it, Karen.
So
wow.
I'm pretty high on this generation. Yeah, they're a little different than we are, and guess what? We were a little different than our parents were, and they were a little different than their parents were. But there's courage and their ability and brilliance in this generation, and I see it every day.
Thank you. Wow,
I'm not worried.
No, great story. I really appreciate that. And those of you who are listening, folks, I know I have a very diverse audience, Karen, who check into the podcast I've been producing lately, and you really enlightened me as well, and giving me a little more insight and more. Again, see how we're learning. Bringing my guest here for like yourself, Karen, really lifts up to our spirit. So good, and there's a lot of promise out there for our country and for anyone out there. So
there is.
Karen, thank you. Karen, what would you say that you're most grateful for lately?
Again, that's a question like your other question. It's changed over time. I am grateful now. I'm grateful to my parents, who both, while they did not and were not able to, through circumstances, to give me a lot of things that I thought I really needed and wanted when I was a younger person, they gave me a work ethic. And that has opened the world for me to get anything I want. So rather than, it's kind of that, you teach a man to fish. If you give him a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you teach him to fish, you give him the whole ocean. That's something I'm grateful for now, because I look at other folks, and they say you should never compare yourself to other people. But when I compare myself to the gifts that other folks were given, money, prestige, a fancy education, nothing has paid off to me as much as the gift of a work ethic from my family, my parents. And of course, as you get older, you're grateful for your beloved, the beloved family members that you have.
Right.
And the last thing that I'm totally grateful for, and this won't be a surprise to you, is I was born in this place in this time. Because that is a fortune that had nothing to do with me. We all could have been born in much dire circumstances, and we weren't.
The divine gave us opportunity and gave you opportunity in this time. Beautiful. Well, what's one book would you share with the audience that inspires you the most?
I can't answer one, but I'll give you two, and I'll
okay.
be quick about
We'll take two now, okay? That's a freebie, folks.
Now I'll throw in a freebie. Probably the two most influential books in my life, and I'll leave sacred books out of it. So I won't talk about the Bible. That's kind of a no-brainer if you're a Christian. But
yeah, that's one of my books also as well.
Yeah. Okay, but I'll talk about secular books. The first one is The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck, and M. Scott Peck, who wrote a series of books. But this one was written back in the mid-'80s, and most profound books I probably ever read, coupled closely, if not equal to, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits.
Yep.
Now, both of those books have something in common. There are very few new ideas in those books. What both of those books do is capture ancient wisdom in a way that a modern person can understand, and that's what they did for me.
Agreed. I have a whole library in my studio here from the book you just mentioned, and then some. Of course, I have multiple copies, and of course, even Jack Canfield's The Success Principles that I'm certified trainer in his work, and they're all now brought into more of a modern platform, so easy to understand. And again, I remember who told me this. All the religions out there, all the different religions out there, all the wisdom out there are all brought in today in a contemporary format. And it's not new, and we'll continue on doing that. That's awesome. So, would you share with us a specific time? Now, I'm going to bring this back a little bit here, where you created something that you failed at. And I hate to use the word failure, because I know that we are both failure gets you closer to your goal. But what's one failure that changed your trajectory? Besides, we talked about the four branches at the recruiting office there, and then you chose the Navy there. What's one area that you failed at, but it made a big difference in currently? What would you say?
What a compelling question. Something I failed at that caused me to change directions.
Or enhanced direction.
Well, actually, it's not that I have trouble thinking of the failures in my life. Believe me, any honest person can probably list them
I
off
vouch for that
quickly.
myself too, as well. Being vulnerable.
However, I will say that the failures in my life caused me to double down on my efforts. But they were always in the same direction. In other words, when I failed, that goes back to something I learned in the Naval War College.
Okay.
And this is a really great takeaway for your audience. It's very important to distinguish between a bad idea and a good idea badly executed.
I like that.
And yeah, it's very powerful. And most of my failures were good ideas that I failed to execute properly. So what I needed to do was not go back and change direction. I didn't need to pivot. I needed to learn how to execute better in the same direction, as opposed to go back and say, this was a terrible idea to begin with, go in an entirely different direction. And that, I think, is a very useful tool everywhere in your life to distinguish between a bad idea and a good idea badly executed. When things are a mess and you look back and say, why? That's a good question to ask. And for example, I have had issues where I failed a test in school, for example. Well, it was a good idea to study that day, and I didn't do it. I executed poorly. Instead, I went out and partied or, hoo-hawed around and didn't apply myself. Well, that doesn't mean you go out and you quit your degree. It means you go back to work. Stay home, stay out of the clubs, and go home and work. So those are the sorts of things where I would say that illustrates the example of that.
I like that. Thank you. Thank you so much there. And it reminds me of the Thomas Edison, and he failed multiple times, right? Well, we enjoy the light bulb. We enjoy light, right?
Yes, we do.
And how many times over and over and over again he failed at, and he failed over. And
imagine if he had said, "Well, this is just a bad idea."
Right. Over 10.
No, this is a good idea. I just didn't execute it correctly.
Correct. And
that's a perfect example.
After 10,000 times, 10,000 ways not to, but the 10,001 time he's succeeded to it. So reminds me. Thank you. Well, Karen, I know that we're coming to almost to a kind of a closure. I hate to use the closure, but of your time here at the X Factor to Success. So I really appreciate that, folks. I hope you're really getting something valuable here. Great content, great inspiring background information from retired Captain Karen. I call you Karen. Baetzel. I feel I still have the respect to call you Captain. Capitana.
Well, I appreciate that. But we're friends enough that you better call me Karen.
She got it. So, Karen, before we say farewell, what legacy and imprint that you want to leave behind? Let's say it's 150 years from now, and they look at you, you find your work in Battle Axe, and they find the work that you've done over the years. What would you leave behind for those who will read? And I know you have your granddaughter there, right? Right.
I would like to leave a legacy of gratitude in my family, for them to appreciate what we have.
Right.
And understand that all of us, that's one of the reasons why I love cemeteries so much. It reminds me, not in a creepy way, but in a healthy way, in a holy way, we're all here on borrowed time.
Yep.
None of us know what tomorrow brings, if we're going to have a tomorrow. So we ought to be grateful. And that's a pretty common thing right now is the gratitude movement. And I think it's a great and good thing, because we, especially here in America, the richest, most wealthiest abundance that people have ever known.
Amen.
We forget that.
Yep.
We forget that. So that is probably one of the first things I'd like to leave as a legacy, is gratitude for what we have, and the stewardship that goes along with gratitude to take care of it.
I love it. And I know I practice a ritual every morning, the attitude of gratitude. I'll say 5 major things in the morning. By the way, do you have any rituals that you do that keeps you in line and focused with the work that you're doing? If you want to share with us.
Well, I actually use that monster of a cell phone to discipline myself. And this is my other master, the Fitbit.
Oh,
which
yeah.
has done more for my physical health since I left initial training than anything else. But I spend about 2 miles on the road in the morning by myself, and I like to go when it's dark, and that centers me very much for the day. And the rest of my day is delightfully undisciplined, and I do whatever I want.
Okay, may I ask you, how early morning are you? Again, one of the success principles also is that the 5 a.m. Club by Raman Sharma, one of the books that I've been following. And I have his audio book, I have his book, and the 5 a.m. Club. Those who get up that early the early bird gets the early bird. Right.
I'm very much an early bird, but going along with being an early bird is I like to be in bed very early. I am no fun to party with anymore because I want to go to bed. So this morning it was a little earlier than usual. I was out at 5:40 or 4:45, but that was because I couldn't sleep. But most days it's in the dark.
Super. Well, thank you for sharing your insight there. So before we say farewell, what last comments? Actually, once again, where can we find you? Where can the audience find you? Where can people reach out? And so just give us where are you in social media, and then I'll put it on the show notes.
Okay, my two best contacts are the website, which you're going to share that with the folks at www.truebattleaxe.com, and I have a Facebook page, Battle Axe Consulting, or you can Google my name and get my private Facebook page, but you'll see mostly pictures of my dog. So I think you would want to go to my business website for this sort of conversation.
Sure.
And I would love that. And I just want to say thank you. It was such a pleasure to meet all of you in New York at the District 46 conference this spring, and I particularly enjoyed talking with you and sharing your love of country with me, which is very meaningful. So thank you for Rogero. I really appreciate that.
Karen, thank you, and thank you for your service for this country. I came here literally off the boat as a little child on the Henry Hudson in New York, and I came here from Italy. And my parents knew that you come here, you work hard, work smart, respect, all the principles and values, and that's why I have the flag outside my door every day, lit up also, properly lit, and properly have staff when necessary. And I am grateful for this country for giving me the opportunity to be inspiring, to empower, and to educate, have children, and meet people like you, Karen. And again, and I was very fortunate very fortunate to have you at the Toastmasters. And I'm going to share this podcast with all the network folks. And
okay,
I know our district director, you will listen to this here, and Mark will be listening to this and sharing with his whole group here in New York.
Well, that was a great time. You guys were such generous hosts.
Yeah, well, thank you, and hope to see you again first. So, but before we say farewell, what are the last comments or inspiring encouragements to the audience out there?
Well, I would ask everybody to just look around themselves. Just take a moment and look around and understand we're all fearfully and wonderfully and delightfully unique. And there's something inside you that somebody else needs today, so give it to them. Awesome.
Well, you heard that, folks. Retired Captain Karen Baetzel, also known as Karen. So, Karen, we thank you so much for taking your valuable time to be on the X Factors to Success show. The content and you're sharing your story with us here in this very short period of time will hopefully inspire others out there who are listening And folks, share this podcast, rate this podcast, and share it. I mean, maybe someone could be inspired. A woman out there going some choices and maybe going into the military. And there's a lot here, folks. So thank you very much. So, Karen, have a wonderful, wonderful week. We start off our new last quarter of the year, 2019. And those of you who have goals, who have leadership, go ahead and check out Battle X there on the website. You could probably get some more information and get that book there, Stepping Stones to Success. I'm sure you'll find that very valuable. And reach out to Karen. I'm sure she'll reach out to you and tell her that you heard her on the X Factors to Success. So, Karen, have a wonderful day, and
you too.
And thank you so much. So, folks, you've been listening to the X Factors to Success podcast show with the G-Man and, of course, the wonderful retired Captain Karen Baetzel. Have a wonderful day. Be inspired. As I say always, live with purpose, passion, and make a difference.